Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today in the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, आप सबका स्वागत है, आप सबका अभिनंदन है. So today we will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, the story of King Vena. Hare Krishna. Devi, please.
हरे कृष्णा डियर व्यूअर्स, डियर डिवोटीज, सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आज की श्रीमद् भागवतम क्लास में. प्रभु जी चैप्टर लेवल पर सारे जो लेसन्स होते हैं वो हमें इंसाइट्स देते हैं, हमारे साथ शेयर करते हैं. और इस वक्त हम कर रहे हैं कैंटो 4. प्रभु जी आज हम कर रहे हैं चैप्टर 14,
Yes.
जिसमें कथा है किंग वेना की. तो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग है और ये जो कथाएं होती हैं श्रीमद् भागवतम में, दे आर लोडेड विद सो मेनी लेसन्स. सो आइए साथ में श्रवण करिए और नोट्स बनाते चलिए, कमेंट्स करते चलिए, पार्टिसिपेट करिए. यू आर ऑल वेलकम टू पोस्ट योर कमेंट्स. लेकिन आपके जो क्वेश्चंस हैं वो कृपया क्लास एंड होने के बाद ही कमेंट्स में डालें सो दैट वी डोंट मिस इट. सो प्रभु जी, आई विल नेम आउट फ्यू व्यूअर्स. बैसाखी माता जी, चित्रा माता जी, वेलकम. हरे कृष्णा. श्रेया, बंटी, अक्षय, शरद, दामोदर, शिल्पा, विपुल, अर्पण, माधवी, सैम कपूर, कृष्णदास, अवीश, कुणाल, मनोहर, हरि बोल. सभी डिवोटीज का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. राणा, गीता, देशा माता जी, वेलकम. कमेलिया, विश्वजीत घोष, गोपाल, गोविंद, चित्रा, पद्मजा, दिलीप कुमार एंड मेनी मोर व्यूअर्स. हरि बोल. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, please go ahead with the prayers.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please join us for Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyet. Shavatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shamana Kirtana Hridayantasto Hya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhatsatam Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavti Nashtiki. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14. Maitreya Uvacha Brahagvadasya te munayo lokanam shema darshinaha gopataryasti vranam pashyantah pashu samyatam. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero Vidur, the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anga, there was no one to protect the interests of the people, they understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non-regulated. Purport: in this verse, the significant word is Shema Darshinaha, which refers to those who are always looking after the welfare of people in general. All the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of how to elevate all the people of the universe to the spiritual platform. Indeed, they advised the kings of every planet to rule the people with that ultimate goal of life in mind. The great sages used to advise the head of the state or the king, and he used to rule the populace in accordance with their instruction. After the disappearance of King Anga, there was no one to follow the instruction of the great sages. Consequently, all the citizens became unruly, so much so that they could be compared to animals. As described in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, human society must be divided into 4 orders according to the quality and worth. In every society, there must be an intelligent class, administrative class, productive class, and worker class. In modern democracy, these scientific divisions are turned topsy-turvy, and by voice, Shudras or workers are chosen for administrative posts. having no knowledge of the ultimate goal of life. Such persons whimsically enact laws without knowledge of life's purpose. The result is that no one is happy. Hare Krishna. So please join us for Guru Prati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Pashyati Deshatarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatadham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So Srila Prabhupada, from the very beginning, he would go very strong on identifying the essence of the chapter. Right? So here, in the purport itself, Srila Prabhupada is revealing that the saintly people, the devotees of the Lord, they are always looking for the welfare of people. And now the reference is given to Bhrigu Muni, who is the leader of the Saptarishi at that time. So again, and this is the Treta Yuga period where this pastime is occurring. And what has happened is, just for the people who want to understand, Maitreya Muni is revealing this pastime to Mahatma Vidur, who has taken his shelter. And this narration, this conversation has been further described at the bank of Ganges or Yamuna in Delhi by Hastinapur by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj is fasting until death. So in 7 days he is about to die. So he had been listening this pastime, so he is hearing this pastime, and in that assembly is present Sutta Goswami, who later on goes to Naimisharanya, and the assembly of great sages, again many thousands of sages, their spokesperson is Shaunaka Rishi. So there, Sutta Goswami is narrating this, Srimad Bhagavatam, and this conversation between Maitreya Muni and Mahatma Vidur. And of course, we all understand that Mahatma Vidur is none other than Yamraj, who was cursed to become a Shudra. So he took birth as Vidur, the younger brother of Pandu and Dhritarashtra, and so he is, getting enlightenment. And Yamraj, we all know, is one of the Mahajanas. So here, what is important is to understand that the saintly people are constantly looking for welfare of the people, and that's why the focus has been how can everyone become spiritually advanced and attain the goal of life. So again, we all have a purpose. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This is where the first inquiry starts. And Srila Prabhupada, in this particular purport, clearly identifies that no matter which country we go to, what language we speak, and sometimes even people make, and because of conditioning, the material conditioning is so strong that they say, only in India or only in Hindi. This is also material conditioning, right? We have to understand that language is only a media to transfer the knowledge, right? To have an exchange of communication, and conversation can go on. So information can flow. So that is an important piece of language. That is the purpose of language. And, if we were giving this class in Sanskrit, then no one would be there because very few people understand Sanskrit. And actually, Sanskrit is the language the whole Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken and written in. So, Srila Prabhupada, being very merciful and following the instruction of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, translated Srimad Bhagavatam in English, and many of his disciples translated it in further different languages, so that people all around the world with different languages can understand the spiritual knowledge. And that is the focus. The saints are focused on making all the people spiritually advanced. And here, there is another reference given, that the sages had the capability to provide that level of administration or to do all those things, but their focus was to manage people, to be the, like the guiding advisors to the king. And so Kshatriyas, the administrators, are based on their nature. So again, quality of work, nature and work, that is the basis of how one should be categorized in one of the four classes. But no matter, so again, these four Chaturvarna Maya system, Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So Guna is, the nature of a person, and then Karma, the kind of activity one engages in. Those are the two criteria which refers to. And so that should be the way of identifying different categories. And the sages, the saintly persons, they are normally scholarly and they are engaged in devotion service, and they want to engage others in devotion service. So they don't take on to administrative ruling unless it becomes a need of the time, right? Because Vaishnavas are known to do any other activity, under the guidance or under the need, under the instructions of the spiritual master. Like Srila Prabhupada himself, even though he was writing so many books, even though he was spreading Krishna consciousness, he was still running the whole, organization. He was making very important administrative decisions because that was the need of the time, that organization needed a leader. So a Vaishnava, is beyond this four classes, because these four classes refers to in the material world to be able to carry out different kind of activities, and these four classes have to be very much aligned. So Brahmana is said to be the face of the Lord, right? When we talk about universal form, the Kshatriyas are said to be the arms of the Lord. The Vaishyas are the thighs, and the Shudras are the legs or feet. So in this particular case, it is not that when we are looking at spiritual advancement, only the face will, move forward. The whole universal form moves forward. So again, the whole society as an entity moves forward and gets spiritually advanced only when all the parts are working together very nicely, doing what needs to be done to be able to achieve the common goal, which is love of Godhead. So that is, the inquiry is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. What is the purpose of this life? Why am I here? Why is there so much pain? Why is there suffering in this world? Why do bad things happen to good people? To be able to answer all these questions, we have to understand what is that goal. And the goal is the love of Godhead, that we need to be able to attain that love of Godhead. We need to be able to surrender to, and become qualified to be the recipient of this great gift of love of Godhead. And to be able to get that gift, and surrender, we need to have the right qualities. And so we have to give up all anarthas. And this chapter is filled with all these various kind of anarthas that sometimes the administrative class could have. And Srila Prabhupada says that in the current society, everything is topsy-turvy. If you look at the qualification of the administrators all around the world in different nations, they normally designate that the person should be born here, person should be of this minimum age. Well, both are designated with respect to the body. Nowhere do we see that a person should be having such and such qualification, having proven himself in so many administrative duties. Sometimes we see someone who's a scholar or someone who's a celebrity, they're given a post just because of the fact. And then democracy, right? Democracy is based on votes coming from the population, of the people, for the people, by the people. And in the previous chapter, Srila Prabhupada clearly writes that monarchy, of course, in spiritual guidance, when instructed by the spiritual leaders, is much better than democracy. Because, let me ask you this, in a classroom, there is one teacher with 30 children, right? And in this classroom, if the teacher says, what do you want to have for lunch? And these are your options. We'll have nutritional vegetable, and grains-based food. We will have chocolate, and then we will have ice cream. If these three choices are given, what do you think the children are going to pick up? And they'll say, we'll like to have a combination of chocolate versus ice cream. That would be a vote of vegetable versus chocolate and ice cream. Would have 30 votes for chocolate and ice cream and 1 vote for teacher. Democracy, if we follow that, well, we have lost the purpose because all these children are going to have bad condition. That's the condition of a society. People are just seeking self gratification. If a leader comes and says, I'll give you everything for your self gratification, I'll meet all your demands, right? People would just go and vote for that person without realizing how is this person going to meet all our demands. How is this person going to meet while continuing to be continue to keep the economy stable, continue to foster a spiritual growth for all the society. People forget the spiritual aspect, and then most of the people, like 99.9% over there, are materially driven. So they vote for a person who is going to give them material advancement but reduce. Again, the trade-off is big because then you lose the spiritual progress. And that is something we should be very cautious about. Everything should be dovetailed so that we engage in Krishna's service, Lord's service, in devotional service. So that is the process through which we will get the goal. So we have to understand that. So unless the leaders understand the sambandh, right, the relationship we have with the Supreme Lord, everything else is just going to get topsy-turvy. So here in this particular chapter, I'll first give you the gist and then we'll dive into the, the lessons in this chapter. So King Vena, again, he's not yet made king, and the sages are realizing that at this particular time, it is in the absence of King Anga that nobody could find, and King Anga had left his kingdom because he was, really aggrieved and he was pained by seeing his son who was very severe and cruel. And so he left his home and nobody could find him. So what happens when there is no king, no administrator? Things turn topsy-turvy because the rogues and thieves, they take over and they start, robbing the general populace. And all kind of violence starts there. And people cannot be regulated. In the absence of any regulated life, any discipline, any well-established rules and regulations being imposed onto the citizens and onto the society, the whole condition becomes very difficult. And the people are constantly in suffering because they are being looted day and night by the thieves and rogues who could very well be appearing as merchants, as powerful people, as people with gangs and so forth. So at that time when they saw this, even though they had the capability, they did not take on that position, right? Even though Bhrigu Muni and all the other great sages, they could have run the administration, they said, well, we want to make sure that a Kshatriya is installed, a Kshatriya is running this. And so at that time, thinking that Vena would be the right choice, because when he will be there, all these thieves and rogues, what is visible to them outwardly would be able, they will be subdued, they will be under control. And so, with the permission of his mother, Sunita, who was the daughter of death personified, they inaugurated and they made Vena the king. As soon as Vena became the king, things became worse. Yes, the immediate effect is there that the thieves and rogues, they are very much afraid and they hid themselves. They did not want to raise their hand because they knew that Vena is very cruel king, and if he catches hold of the thieves, then he will immediately destroy them. He will immediately punish them, and since he is very much he gets pleasure in in pains and giving other pains and giving other punishments which are very painful, so they immediately were hiding. So again, thieves and rogues and people in that particular mindset are very smart at times, so they were hiding. But then what happens? Vena, when it is said that he attained 8 kind of opulences. Now, Ashta Vibhutibhi, right, by 8 opulences. But he was not practicing yoga, he was not spiritually advanced. But he became very proud of his royal position. So, a king is also known as Nar Narayan, right? He's Nar as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Brahmanas are known as Nar Bhagavat. So again, they are, human beings who are engaged in, who are devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is very important that these two classes work together in a very nice manner. So as soon as King Vena came to the throne, he actually neglected the sages. Not just neglected the sages, he would, get pleasure in giving other, pain, physical pain, and seeing that others are tormented. And he, with that mindset, he would, do things like sometimes, such a person, if such a person goes to see that, oh, this person, he sees that, in his, among his citizens, there are beautiful ladies, then they would want to exploit those ladies. They see that there are old men, they want to deride old men all the benefits. If they see someone is very, rich, then they want to take away rich. So this is related to the body designation I. I makes a person envy. I am so and so. So now King Vena is thinking, I am the king. So I am Nar Narayan. I am worshipable Lord for all my citizens. So this is related to the bodily designation. So in this mood, one becomes envy. And then he is thinking that this is my ruling, right? He was made the ruler of the whole planet Earth. So he's thinking this is my kingdom. And my refers to I and mine. I causes envy and my causes lust. So he became lusty because of this. He would say, oh, if there is something someone has that is very attractive, very important, then I should have it. So he would exploit others, again. That is the mindset that he had. And people knew that to get that, by hook or crook, he would acquire that. So again, that was his mindset. So it is said, sometimes in the scriptures, they provide a very quick reference that when King Vena went on his chariot and went out, it became a very troublesome situation, right? So that is by showing that when he is doing the administration, he was constantly exploiting the resources on this planet Earth. He was exploiting the people for his sense gratification, and he was deriving great pleasure by giving them pain, others pain. Such was the king. And not just this, he was completely devoid of any spiritual advancement, right? Any spiritual knowledge. So what did he do? He must have felt like, okay, all these rituals that are going on and people are worshipping these demigods and they're putting all these oblations and the foodstuffs in fire. Rather, let's save the foodstuffs so that we can enjoy, right? So he stopped all fire sacrifices, all the spiritual activities, all the ceremonies. And he actually would tell the Brahmanas that if you do this, then you would be punished. So of course the Brahmanas did not want to get punished because of physical atrocities he was causing all around the world. They immediately stopped those activities. So again, Srila Prabhupada identifies that modern government are in succession, right? So they are just like King Vena's ruling. So they are in succession of King Vena. And so just like King Vena stopped all Vedic sacrifices, charity and austerities, including religious rituals, modern government, they don't really enable that. They engage in some limited activities, right? And in the name of secularism, they say, because we are secular, we engage with all, they don't engage with any. That's just the opposite side. They're thinking they are being secular, but they are actually being on the opposite side. And people, when they are thinking, oh, I'm a Hindu, again, bodily designation. I'm a Muslim, bodily designation. I'm a Christian, bodily designation. And then these people, different groups, which is based on religion, and religion is based on faith. And faith, people can have different faiths, and that can change the religion. But our dharma, our true dharma is that of the spirit soul. Jivera Surupaya Krishna Nityadas. Unless all the religions are aligned with that aspect, there will be constant conflicts under different, religious groups, and that would lead to again topsy-turvy situation. And so, if one is identified, then the second one feels neglected and third gets neglected. So again, there is constant challenge going on. So in the name of secularism, no religion is given preference at all, and more preference is given to eat, sleep, and be merry. So everyone is materially engaged. So everyone is working like. So Srila Prabhupada, he uses some very harsh words, like, people are working like asses, hogs and dogs. So it's very important to look at it. What is the life of an ass? So people are working crazy hours. They're taking long commute. So the life of a donkey, an ass is a donkey. So a donkey is being, put under heavy labor by its master. And what is it taking all this labor for? It's taking the labor for just a little bit of grass that it can get anywhere. Yet at the same time, he wants to please his master. Srila Prabhupada gives another very nice example that sometimes a dog feels that it's very important. Our dog is very proud. So the dog is barking, he is standing very strong and is constantly barking on others. When the master comes, then the dog immediately becomes very obedient. Right? Dog by nature is faithful. So becomes obedient. And master says, come here, the dog comes. So Srila Prabhupada says that this master is Maya, right? Maya Devi, Durga. So again, when material energy, she says to a man that you do this, becomes very obedient because wants to enjoy materially, wants to stay on the good books of Maya Devi, of Goddess Durga. So again, of material energy. So again, this particular mindset of working like a donkey for little bit of grass that one can get anywhere very easily, one is engaged like a donkey. When they approach the opposite sex, again, in a married family life, we see that in a material married family life, when a husband and wife are living together, wife is constantly telling her husband with various, loading him with various demands, which is causing him to work like a donkey. And then afterwards, when he approaches her, she kicks him like a she-ass kicks when a ass approaches her. So again, that is material dealing. So in any condition, a man in material life, especially in the household material family life, is completely, tormented, and he's very, he's not happy. Rather, he is filled with all the painful experiences. And he doesn't get to eat well, he doesn't get to sleep well, he doesn't get to work well. And he's not well, simply stated. And that's why in material life, people say, even in material life, people have, they live less years, while in the spiritual life, people live long years, right? So, and they live happy life. So why is this difference? Because you are working like an ass. Now, what about hogs and dogs? A dog becomes very proud, but is controlled by Maya, so controlled by the master. So if people are controlled by the various lurements provided by material energy, and material energy, she has a big advertisement program going on to attract everyone, right? Now, even in YouTube, when we are looking at the spiritual channels and looking at the videos, we see that YouTube is playing various materialistic, like completely in the mode of ignorance, some of the advertisements. And we're like, oh, Maya is everywhere. So we have to understand and be very cautious to save ourselves from the influence of Maya. So King VENA, he was saying that everyone should work hard so that he can enjoy. Everyone should make oblations, offerings to him, not to the demigods, because he is Narayan, he is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, the conditions was going on. And Srila Prabhupada, he is identifying in the purpose that this is not a place for a gentleman and lady. Now we talk about sacrifices. Sometimes people talk about animal sacrifices in the, sacrificial arena. And currently in COVID-19 and many other times, the new diseases as they are found, there's constant experimentation going on animals in the lab. We talked about that in the previous class. And they justified that, this is to get the, but what benefit do these animals get? No benefit at all. Rather, they die in miserable conditions in the lab, in the laboratories, right? While on the sacrificial arena, when an animal was sacrificed, it would advance through, in 8.4 million species of life, it would advance and get an advanced life, or it would get a new, old animal would be sacrificed to receive a new Nav Yavana, again, new body. So again, a strong body. So that way they can, they would live a better life. There is a better opportunity for the living entity so that they can further advance to human form of life and take to devotional service. So that has been covered as well. Srila Prabhupada also means back in 1969 there was, launch of rocket to the moon, and then the first steps, the humans set first step on moon. And then what did they get there? All they got was rocks, and more rocks, right? And Srila Prabhupada, further there was, identified that they didn't go to the moon because as per the Shastras, moon is farther than sun. So even that controversy was there. And then there was this statement of Mars, that they are getting pictures from Mars, and Mars looks like just like Arizona. And Srila Prabhupada identified that, their business was not on Mars. And the name of Mars, NASA was identifying, actually they're getting pictures from Arizona and saying that these are from Mars. And it's very interesting that they got these rocks from Mars and they put this in this museum. What's the purpose? How many people does that expedition feed, from the general populace compared to what was spent on that particular expedition? What level of advancement does a common person feel, spiritually or materially? If you ask these questions, then you realize that actually all these space expeditions are just to get a, superfluous, prestige, just to kind of get a name on something that has no spiritual advancement to it. And that's why Srila Prabhupada wrote a very small but very effective book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. That we do, in devotional service, people can practice Ashtanga Yoga, and as yogis, they can easily transfer themselves to another planet without much difficulty. So maybe they need to, explore this area instead of spending all the tax dollars from people, so that way people don't have to, work so hard, pay such high taxes, and the whole society can learn to be more spiritually advanced, because now they will have time to engage in spiritual activities, in devotional service, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedam. And all these 9 process of devotional service, how do you get started with? Simply with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this material world is not a place for gentleman and lady. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport is saying, go back home while there is still time. He's telling us that take to devotional service now. Take to it so that we can go back home. And then sometimes people say, well, we don't really see many devotees, right? The people are so many. Again, there is not even 10:1 or 1,000:1 comparison. Means if you look at the statistics. So there are very few devotees. So why, how could it be effective? In reality, if we pay attention, as soon as somebody has taken to devotional service, gets the love of Godhead, the goal of life, they leave this material world and go back home, back to Godhead. So similarly, in the Vaikuntha planet, you will not find any materialist. And as soon as somebody has material desire, they're kicked over to the material world. In the material world, as soon as one gets love of Godhead, they go back home, back to Godhead. So of course, the devotees are going to be less in number in the material world. If you really want to see how many devotees are there, then you have to go to a spiritual world, right? And always remember that spiritual world is 75%, in size compared to number of universes than the material world. Material world is actually in minority. Only 25% of all the spiritual and material universes, only 25% universe are the material universes, while 75% of creation is spiritual universe. So now the sages, Bhrigu Muni and others, great sages, they're constantly looking for welfare of innocent populace. While what do karmis say? They seek sense gratification. What do jnanis say? Jnani, they don't want to attach with doing any work. They want to just study the Shastras, and merge into Brahman, which is actually an offense, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed. So they remain aloof from doing any work because work is binding. And yogis, what do they want? They want siddhis, so that they can become bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest, and can acquire anything that they want. Now, reminding of from yogis, I'm reminded of this story that Srila Prabhupada used to say. Uh, so again, Srila Prabhupada used to describe this story that there was this person, he was in a village, but he was not getting name, fame, and glories, right? He was really seeking name, fame, and glories, but nobody would recognize him. So he went out, practiced some Ashtanga yoga, so much so that he got a siddhi that he could walk on water. So he came to the village and he said, tomorrow morning, at 6 a.m., I'm going to show you something at Surya Prabhat Kalpe. I will show you something. Come to the bank of the river. So everybody was gathered at the bank of the river. So this person comes, dressed as a sadhu, and he starts walking on water. And when he comes back, an old man approaches him and he says, what is the advantage of doing this? You spent years in learning this to how to walk on water. But if I have to cross the river, I just give 2 paisa to the boatman and he makes me cross the river. So what is the advantage? And so again, here, all this time and all this energy is completely wasted because you could simply cross the river, by using a boat, with a boat. So again, we have to be very, very careful. Sometimes the people who are conditioned, people who are in the materialist way of life, they get very well attracted by these superfluous things. Somebody who can stand on one hand, somebody who can stand on one finger, upside down, somebody who can walk on their hands, somebody who's, able to go back to Mars and comes back. So again, very great building up rockets and all that stuff. But what's the purpose? It doesn't take you from point A to point B to solve any purpose. And like the expedition to Mars, they built this this toy car, right? And then Hot Wheels said that their Hot Wheels, which can flip back, forth, and sideways, is better, which is $20 worth, than this millions of dollars you have spent in building this particular car to just collect some specimens from Mars planet. So again, we have to be very, very careful. If we are putting endeavor, how is it dovetail in Krishna consciousness? Sometimes people say that, okay, if you want to watch movies, how can we watch movies? Well, you can always watch, Krishna movies, Darling of Vrindavan, and so many wonderful Krishnas and devotional movies are there. Srila Prabhupada's related movies are also there. So again, you can all day long, all year long, all lifeline long, you can keep watching devotional movies. There is no shortage of it. And so what was happening is, now the general populace, the King Vena was very harsh on the people, so whole planet means the general populace, their life was really the innocent one. They were really like ant in a wooden log where there's fire on both sides of the log, right? So when the fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. So that was the condition of the general populace, right? With King Vena, who was very cruel and severe and seeking sense gratification, versus thieves. So they were at home they were tormented by thieves. The ruling of the king, they were tormented by his ruling because he is getting heavy taxes, he's making them work like asses, and they are not having any solution. And why? He had stopped all sacrifices, charity and penances, austerities. While in Bhagavad Gita, right, in the 18th chapter, Lord Krishna says that even the renounced order, one should not give up sacrifice, charity, or penance, because they purify even the pure souls. So Srila Prabhupada, simplifying that, society can even distribute this among themselves and can work very nicely if the brahmacharis are performing sacrifices, constantly going out, chanting the holy name, engaging, preaching, and doing Sankirtan Yajna, which is the Yajna for this age, right? And the Grahasthas are engaged in giving charity, while the renounced order of life, the Vanaprasthas and Sannyasis, they are practicing penances and austerities. Even if they distribute these aspects, they would benefit, very nicely. And great benefit will be there, and they can advance together as a society. While this King Vena, who was so cruel and severe, he was constantly, tormenting his citizens. He was exactly like, being maintained like a snake with a milk, right? And if you maintain a snake with milk, what would happen? The milk will do is increases venom. So, a snake is just looking for an opportunity, such as snake being maintained by milk, to bite its master and kill. So a snake is envious by nature. So King Vena's nature is also described here, that he was very envious and he had become the source of all kind of difficulties. So now sometimes mistake happens, and the sages realized that they made a mistake by making King Vena the king. So again, Vena was not qualified. The ministers were also not happy when he was coronated as the king. So sages realized that the ministers were right and that we made a mistake. But that doesn't mean that now the sages have fallen down. If you present this case to current news people, all they would say is that they should give up their position as sages, right? They should resign, as if the resignation from their position would somehow solve the problem. So it is important for us to realize that if somebody makes a mistake, then we should give that person an opportunity to correct their mistake, right? As soon as the sages realize that all this thing is happening, they realize that, okay, there are all these discrepancies. Then we should try to correct our mistake. And failing to correct one's mistake is one's real fall down. That's an important lesson to learn. That, as a child, when we were trying to learn how to walk, right? Many times we would fall down. When we were trying to learn bicycling, I remember still, we would just take the bicycle, I would just take the bicycle, and many other kids who were learning to ride the bicycle, the first part was how to learn to balance yourself. So we would take it uphill, make sure that we have control on the brakes, just in case, it takes too much the speed is beyond our control. And then we would just sit on it and roll it downhill. And so, while rolling it downhill, many times we would fall down. Does that mean we should give up, riding bicycle, learning how to ride bicycle? Or if a child, when he falls down trying to walk, does it mean that the child should give up walking? No. The idea is that we have to rise again. We have to try again. Rise again, try again. But then we have to focus our energy on achieving a goal that has a purpose in life, right? It's an important thing for a child to learn how to walk so that he can, go from one place to another. So that's the basic need of life. And can be used in Krishna consciousness in walking to the temple. So again, just like Amrish Maharaj did, he would use his legs to walk to the temple. He would use his head to bow down in front of the devotees. He would use his body limbs to touch the devotees. And he would use his senses, like, smelling the tulsi leaves and the flowers, from the lotus feet of the Lordship. He would use his eyes to look at the beautiful deity form of Shri Shri Radha Krishna. And he would, constantly hear the glories of the Lordship. Sankirtan Yajna was still going on. No matter which age, japa, right? The topmost sacrifice is the chanting of the holy name. So again, he would constantly engage himself. So similarly, we can engage all our senses in devotional service. It simply starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now here the sages, they concealed their real anger and they decided that we have to pacify King Vena with sweet words and make him understand that it is very important for general populace to have spiritual advancement, because that is the true benefit of the society working together so that we can go back home, back to Godhead. So that path should not be stopped. So they went together to pacify King Vena. And with sweet words, they spoke with King Vena. And they gave him very important instructions. So important thing is, they also knew what King Vena's perspective is, right? Everything that he was dealing with, he was tuned onto one channel, right? What is that channel? As His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu says, WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? So materialistic people, they have this particular perspective. What's in it for me, right? So they, understanding his mindset, they met him where he is. And that is a very important place. So again, the preachers, when they go out, we connect to the people where they are, not where we are. Because if we connect with where we are, we cannot connect with them. And this is described in a very small story where there was this Christian missionary, right? He went to preach to coal miners once. And so, when he went to preach to coal miners, he was giving a very opulent speech on Bible, like who's Christ and how Christ is our Savior, how Jesus is our Savior, and we have to, surrender unto Jesus. Nobody was connecting with him because every time he would talk about Jesus, they would raise the question, what's his number? Because among the miners, everyone had a number. They could not believe that Jesus would be a person who doesn't have a number. So they were not able to connect. And then he realized that they are not able to connect at all, because when he talks about hellish condition, that hell is, very hot, very miserable place, and it's filled with darkness, and there's a lot of fire and all these things. They're like, that seems like our coal mine. So nothing new here. So then he realized that, they are not able to understand this perspective. So what is dear to them, he understood that they cannot survive without newspaper. They always want to stay connected. So he said that in hell there is no newspaper. And now everybody said, that is very bad. No. Hell is a very bad place to be. There is no newspaper there. So this is where the connection happens. You have to connect to where the person is. So the sages are connected to where King Vena is. They are saying that, hero. So they're calling him hero. Why? Because he's proud of all the actions he's doing, right? That because of him, these thieves and rogues have been subdued. And that's what the sages had asked him to take care of. So he had taken, so he's their hero. So they are like, satisfying his ego, right? The false ego that he has, to help him understand, dovetail him towards the spiritual direction. Sometimes the devotees do that, right? Just like Vibhishan. And at his home, when Ravan once came, he saw the whole walls. They were filled with Ram, 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 Ram. And he said, you're a friend of my enemy, Ram? He said, no, this is Ravan Mandodari, Ravana Mandodari. It is not Ram, it is Ravan Mandodari. Ravan said, this is very good. All houses should have this, on their walls. So yes, devotees are very, clever. They are, under the shelter of the Lord. So they know how to dovetail things in the proper manner. So here the sages were trying to dovetail, to connect with King Vena so that he understands and allows the general populace to have a path for spiritual advancement. So they are telling him that you should allow the spiritual, sacrifices so that people can spiritually advance. You should enable the Brahmanical culture. You should be supporting it so that people get an opportunity to lead a happy life, a peaceful and happy life. And the whole populace will be happy. They will be rejoicing. And they would be, honoring you. Plus, not just this. In this life, you will lead a very wonderful life full of opulences, and your next life will be filled with opulences. You will have a greater, birth after birth. So again, it's all going to your credit. So there is a lot of stuff in here for you, but yet at the same time, King Vena, he was a very foolish king. He was a very dull-headed, and he, in his response, accused the saintly sages of their being inexperienced like small children. He's like saying that you are like a woman who does not, respect her maintainer, her husband, right? Well, rather, she is trying to satisfy her paramour. And this reference, Srila Prabhupada and the Prabhupada is identifying that he's basically saying that he is the maintainer. The king is Vena, he himself is the maintainer of these great sages. And now that they are worshipping Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is saying that you should be worshipping me, not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You should not be worshipping the demigods. No sacrifice should be done for the demigods. Those sacrifices should be done. Actually, all sacrifices, who's the beneficiary of all sacrifices? Lord Vishnu. Bhoktaram yagatapsasam. So all sacrifices are done for the pleasure of Yajna Purusha. So again, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when we chant the mantras, when place oblations in the fire, it ends with Swaha. Swaha is the wife of Agni Dev. And Agni Dev is the carrier who delivers it to Yajna Purusha and all the other participants to whom these oblations have been made. So King Vena was, completely in his false ego, completely in darkness, he was speaking in this manner. So at that time, the sages, they understood that this king was a bad choice and he has to be removed, but he has raised the conflict to the level 5, right? What happens? That, it's like that war state. Either you live or I live. And they say, kill him, kill this king, because he has gone evil completely. And so the saintly persons, they were not happy with the king. So with loud chanting of Vedic mantras, the prowess that they had because of the Vedic mantras, they killed the king on the spot. So Srila Prabhupada identifies that a saintly person is not unhappy when a serpent or a demon is killed, right? Now, it's very interesting that if a living entity, anybody that is killed, it is very painful and people would think that this is not a happy scenario. But in the case of a serpent, a snake is envious by nature. And Srila Prabhupada, once he was, at Gauriamat, where, there was a snake discovered, and he heard Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, giving the instruction that kill the snake. He had a doubt towards, Srila Prabhupada had a doubt, how could my spiritual master sanction another living entity to be killed? So it was later on when he read the Shastras, and when he read that the single person is not unhappy when a serpent is killed, he understood because the serpent is envious by nature. So that, that doubt was clear. And so when, these Brahmanas, they were, chanting, they killed the king Vena. And of course, at this particular time, his mother, Vena's mother, Sunita, she was very, morose. She turned morose, hearing that her son has been killed. So she employed the Brahmanas to preserve the body with various kind of, the pastes and oils and also Vedic chants. So she was preserving the body of her son. And now the sages were like, they had killed this king. So now again the rogues and the thieves, they will start disturbing the general populace, and the population will become non-regulated. The rules and the discipline will go away. How will the administration go on? So with this particular aspect, they were also concerned, because if we neglect, again, they killed Vena because he was neglecting pure humans, right? And if a Brahman, so the sages were also thinking that if we continue to let the king live, then a Brahman's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out. So similarly, their prowess will go away. Srila Prabhupada identifies that in this Kali age, Brahmanas are not so well qualified that they can perform fire sacrifices and so forth, and chant the mantras as they used to in perfect meter, right? So that they could see an immediate effect. So that's why in this age, Brahmanas take shelter of the Sankirtan Yajna, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful that he gave us the opportunity of Sankirtan Yajna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now that King Vena is not there, and this condition is very miserable, they thought about it, they discussed among themselves, what's the solution? Because you still have to find a solution. You corrected your mistake, but then you have not, found a proper solution. So now they thought about it, that, the descendants of Dhruv Maharaj, again coming from Swayambhuva Manu, the semen in this family is very strong. And it would be very nice if somehow we can have someone in this lineage. But then Vena is dead. What to do? So at that time they realized that Sunita had been preserving King Vena's body. So that way they were able to use by churning his thighs, the dead body of King Venus. So again, churning thighs, they were able to revive. So what happened is, as a result of churning of the thighs, a dwarf-like person, Bahuka, he was born from King Venus' body. And so this person had a very short, stature, short arms, short legs, disfigured nose, very dark in color. And so the person, as soon as he was born, he said, "What should I do?" They said, "You should just sit, Nisha." So again, they say, so it is said that after his Nishat's birth, right? So this person is the person from whose Nishad race came out, and they are, not very regulated people. So he immediately took charge of all the resultant actions of King Vena's sinful activities. Like, they do all kind of activities that King Vena was, doing. So they engage in all kind of sinful activities like stealing, plundering, and hunting. And so this whole race, they live in hills and forests, right? However, Srila Prabhupada says that even a person in the Nishad race can be purified and can attain love of Godhead when one takes to Krishna consciousness. When a person even in this race, such a fallen race, such a sinful race, when somebody would take to pure devotional service, the devotional service will purify one and can deliver one in this very lifetime form. And again, that's a very important lesson that in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also reveals to Arjun. Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye api syo papa yodayah striyo vaishyas tatha shudras te api yanti param gatim. So Lord Krishna is saying Partha means son of Pritha. So he is saying the son, O son of Pritha, Arjun, those who take shelter of me, right? Though they be of lower life, women, Vaishyas, as well as Shudras can approach the supreme destination. So Vaishyas are the mercantile men. Their purpose is farming, trading, and cow protection, or sometimes say cattle, protection. And then we have Shudras, the workers, and Kala Shudra Samava. In the Kali age, everyone who's born, they're born as Shudras. So, and it is only with samskar one can elevate. With proper regulated life, one can rise to higher classes. And then ladies, right? Again, Striya. Striya means women. So they are also, they are called lower births among the human beings, but even they can be delivered in this when they take to devotional service and can attain the supreme destination. So that's the verdict of Lord Krishna, that's the direction, that's the instruction of Lord Shri Krishna. So here in this particular chapter, we heard about how Vena was such a cruel king that he was promoting sense gratification and abolishing spiritual advancement. And today's administrators are doing similar things. They're maintaining slaughterhouses, they're encouraging brothels, they're encouraging eat, sleep, and be merry kind of lifestyle, and people being driven by such mindset are now suffering while they're working like asses, hogs, and dogs, right? So we should not lead a life like that, because to maintain ourselves, it takes very little effort. Rather, all our energy should be dedicated in spiritual advancement, which simply starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. At this time, if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
हरे कृष्णा डियर व्यूअर्स, तो आज प्रभु जी ने किया कैंटो 4 चैप्टर 14 द स्टोरी ऑफ किंग वेना। तो इस चैप्टर में इतने वंडरफुल जो लेसन्स थे, आप व्यूअर्स ने इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स को कमेंट्स में सबके लिए शेयर किया। थैंक यू सो मच। इस वक्त प्रभु जी कैन आंसर योर क्वेश्चंस। एक या दो क्वेश्चंस लिए जा सकते हैं। प्लीज पुट योर क्वेश्चंस इन द कमेंट्स। विल वेट फॉर few seconds, otherwise we'll conclude with the prayers. So Prabhuji, there were some comments in the comment section.
Yes.
और करुणा सिंधु प्रभु जी का लास्ट कमेंट था कि engagement in the transcendental loving devotional service of the Lord can make anyone, however sinful he may be, fit to return home back to Godhead. One has only to become free from all contamination by process of devotional service, जो कि आप सभी को लगातार रिमाइंड कराते रहे कि किस तरह से हम कांस्टेंट चैंटिंग अपने लिप्स पर रख सकते हैं. And in this way, everyone can become fit to return back home, back to Godhead. These are such wonderful reminders. And at this time, Prabhuji, I do not see any questions. So please go ahead and do the conclusion.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining us today. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhagavad Pad ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.